Hello everybody and welcome to the channel. My name is Aaron and today we are looking at 10 classic muscle cars that belong in the junkyard. Try not to get too triggered right off the bat. Drop a like on this video, that way I don't take the abuse from this, and let's get going. At number 10 we have the 1975 Chevrolet Monza. Chevrolet's 145 horsepower Monza saw 731,000 units produced over 5 years. The Chevy Monza was supposed to compete with a lot of the Japanese cars of the era. It was supposed to be a small but fun compact car that would get you to point A to point B while maintaining American aesthetics. Initially it was intended to have a rotary engine in it, but later that was scrapped and it was given a 5.0 V8. Because it had the V8, it technically was a muscle car. However, because it looks like a goof, it just really didn't fit into that niche at all, and it suffered pretty badly. To this day, you could pick one up for 12,000 bucks, looks like, according to classic.com, which for a classic muscle car that's a pretty good price. And again, if you rolled up to a meet, nobody would probably know what this was. I mean, I've never heard of this thing. At number 9 on the list, we have the 1979 Ford Mustang. This was the third generation Mustang and the first of the Fox body platform. However, you can tell it was the first of the generation because it's got that super Uggers front end on it. It also had a terrible 140 horsepower and 250 torque, which out of a V8 was pretty disgusting. I mean, that's what a Prius makes nowadays. But they did manage to sell 370,000 units during its first year. They did finally work out the kinks and they released the facelift version of the Fox body that has performed much better ever since. Next up on the list, we have the 1974 Chevrolet Nova SS. Now, hang on before you get your socks knotted up. The Nova in the late 60s had a 6.5 liter big block putting out almost 300 horsepower. However, by the 70s, the SS was merely a trim package and the car came with a much lower outputting V8, which only had 175 horsepower. So they literally killed it by 120 horsepower, and all they gave you was an extra $130 trim package for the SS. So yeah, it really didn't do well, and that's pretty much where the Nova died. The Impala was Chevy's very first vehicle to ever see the SS Super Sport moniker on it, and in 2004 Chevy tried to bring that back with the Impala SS. However, the V6 supercharged engine that came in this car only put out 240 horsepower, so even though it was supercharged, it had pretty poopy power output. As they put it, the midlife crisis on wheels had a 0 to 62 time of 6.5 seconds. To put it disrespectfully, the Nissan Altima has a better 0 to 60 time of 6.2 seconds, and they don't call it a Skyline. Next in the list is the 1981 Mercury Capri, which Ford literally just took their European Capri model, slapped it onto a Fox body, the same ugly Fox body that we covered earlier in this list, and tried remarketing it as a more luxurious Fox body Mustang. However, this absolute disgrace, while also still being ugly, only made 120 horsepower, bro. 120 horsepower? Hang on, I'll just look this up really quick. Bruh, this motorcycle makes 120 horsepower, bro. Come on, man. All right, number 5 on the list is the 1994 Ford Mustang. The SN95 or the Fox 4 basically just flopped because it didn't have any power. These cars were pretty heavy and they had both a V6 and a V8 variant. However, the 3-liter V6 was capable of 150 horsepower, which that's pretty bad. But the V8 made 215, so that's still really bad. To be almost in the 2000s and still be making less than 250 horsepower out of a V8 is pretty bad. So it just kind of flopped due to not having any power. Arriving at the dawn of the muscle car era, Buick released the GS 400 land barge. I mean, look at this thing. This is like the original Hemi. And ultimately that's what killed it. Although it had a 6.6 liter 340 horsepower V8, which in the 60s was incredible. I mean, we saw what Ford was putting out in the 90s was half that. So they were putting out an absolutely monster engine out of the 60s. However, Buick's vehicle weighed 4,200 pounds, and people just hated how damn heavy it was. So ultimately, it just kind of didn't do well. You could get a much lighter vehicle at the time, so people typically opted for that. Okay, at number 3, we have the 1982 Chevy Camaro Iron Duke. I'm just gonna read you exactly what they say, because goddamn. Sadly, the Iron Duke Camaro is the worst muscle car ever. Arriving in 1982, GM required sturdy dependability. Sounds okay. So they chose to equip their vehicles with a cast iron lump of simplicity known as the Iron Duke. A disgusting excuse of a power plant slithered its greasy pistons into muscle car royalty between 1982 and 86. They even sold 65,000 Iron Dukes in 1982 alone, which was the release year. The 2.5 liter Iron Duke produced an atrocious 90 horsepower as it dragged its 2,864 pound chassis across the tarmac. A 4-cylinder muscle car that took 20 seconds to reach 60 miles per hour was hardly worthy of the Camaro nameplate. 20 seconds. Okay, at number 2 on the list, we're getting a little bit closer, but at number 2 on the list is the 1978 Ford Mustang II King Cobra. Now, from looking at it, just right off the bat, first appearances, this thing looked pretty badass. Looks pretty sick. However, once you start looking into it, it had a 140 horsepower engine in it, but it did make 250 foot-pounds of torque at 3,500 RPM, so that seems pretty good. But what killed this vehicle was that it came out of the same parts bin as the Ford Pinto. The Ford Pinto was one of the most dangerous vehicles ever produced and is responsible for unaliving as many as 500 people due to a massive defect in the fuel system, and would just ignite into complete infernos when it was rear-ended. And so, because it shared the same parts as the really fragile, crappy Ford Pinto, this one kind of just died off. Nobody wanted to risk it, especially on a far much more expensive Ford Mustang. And rowing up the river comes the Dodge 1976 Aspen RT at number 1 on the list. The Aspen RT had incredible potential, and during the 70s it didn't have a lot of competition, because as we've seen, there was not a lot of good power in those vehicles at that time. The Aspen managed to make 170 horsepower and 280 pounds of torque, so actually pretty good for that time period. Its brothers and sisters were really slacking at the time. However, the Aspen and its brother, the Plymouth Volare, suffered underdevelopment and quickly became the most recalled car of the period. It had faulty brake lines, exploding fuel lines, detaching seatbelts, premature rusting, and overall just had a horrible build quality. The car, they recalled 1.3 million of them, and so it just became a massive flop. They suffered greatly for this. It's absolute shame. Come on, Dodge. You saw yourself once on this list and it was number 1. So anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching. I really, really, really appreciate it. Drop a like down below on this video. Let me know what other content you want to see. Let me know what you thought of this one. Dodge, I'm sorry. And I will see you guys in the next video. Drink water, be safe, and I'll see you later.